Today's guest has spent decades walking a spiritual path and writing about the mysteries that connect us all, from life experience to spiritual awakening. He brings both wisdom and practical sense of what it means to live awake in a noisy world. Bill Portler is the author of Awakening to Ourselves, a book that explores the process of spiritual awakening through both personal storytelling and timeless truths. Bill has lived a life full of experiences that many listeners will find deeply relatable, from questioning his beliefs to finding clarity through writing and spiritual practice. He's been a guest on a podcast like World Order, The Rising, and The Oracle's Path. Today we'll dive into his journey, his book, and what it really means to awaken to yourself. Bill, welcome to Attention is the Currency. Great to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
So Bill, our first question, we go, what drew you to writing Awakening to Ourselves?
Uh, I've been on a spiritual path ever since I was about 5 or 6 years old, kneeling in church, wanting to know if there was some real purpose to God and if God even existed. And, then I went through life like everybody else and went off to college and got married and had kids. But I always had this nagging thing in the background. And so I started a spiritual book club and that grew. And I was in the Catholic Church at the time. And then I had to leave the Catholic Church because my spirituality was getting outside of what the Catholic Church was comfortable with. They didn't ask me to leave, but I just knew it was time to leave. And uh, and then I had a number of spiritual experiences, and it took me like 30 years to get to a level of awareness that I felt like I kind of understood what was going on. I got the gift of tears. So if you hear me cry in the middle of all this, is one of the gifts that I got through a spiritual experience, and it's always stayed with me. My kids won't let me pray because I always cry. Uh, don't let Dad pray; he'll start crying. But kind of when I got 30 years or so into my journey, Spirit told me to write a book that was my story, my experiences, and the practicality of what spirituality really is and why we're called to it. And that, it's not some special yoga pose or, there's a thousand things out there that are, I think, beautiful, but also can be very misleading. But spirituality is very, very practical. And so Spirit told me to write the book. I wrote the book. And then Spirit told me you're going to have to go market it and you're going to have to reach your audience. And so I've slowly been pecking away at that.
Um, So was there a particular moment that sort of shifted you to understanding of spirituality? Was it a because you said you were with the church? Was that particular defining moment?
I mean, I got a couple of them. One of them was I really started getting uncomfortable within the Catholic Church original sin that we're born into this world with some type of taint on our soul and that we've got a lifetime to figure this out. And if we don't pass the judgment at the end, we either go to heaven or hell. I said, I just started saying, surely God's not like that. And so I started digging in and found out where original sin came from. Then I started to question some other stuff in the Catholic Church. And I've been Catholic all my life and raised my family Catholic, all my kids Catholic. And in fact, I've got a son that's a monk right now. Um, but I was sitting at a stoplight one day and my whole belief system, it was literally like I had a brick building around me and it all crumbled and the dust just all came up. That's what it felt like in my body and in my experience while I was sitting at a stoplight. And I felt naked and I felt vulnerable. And that's when everything kind of completely fell apart. And then I started rebuilding from there.
Yeah. I think well, probably a lot of people don't actually accept that they're going to they get rid of their previous beliefs to go to something that is actually more aligned with them. I imagine a lot of people stay stuck.
it's anytime that you're part of a tribe, a group, okay, everybody in that group, for the most part, adheres to the philosophy. But once you start to say, oh, this philosophy, these rules, this doesn't work for me anymore, then you personally you have a little bit of guilt and shame, and the group doesn't want you anymore because you're like a splinter, right? You are no longer conforming to the group, and so you get pushed out energetically, physically, mentally, and but then you once you're pushed out, you don't haven't necessarily built your new philosophy, and on the spiritual path, people find that very lonely, and it is very lonely. Uh, but if you stay with it, there's peace and joy at the end of it.
And how did your writing process help you deepen your own awakening as well in there?
That's a great question. And I didn't know what it was going to do. Spirit told me to get this out so other people. But what it forced me to do was it forced me to codify all these beliefs I had in my mind onto a sheet of paper. So sometimes I'd be writing and I go, do you really believe that? And I'd have to question myself. And then I'd go, no, I don't really completely agree with that sentence. And then I would have to change some words, right?
Yeah.
But what that enforcing me to codify my thought process, put structure around my thought process, which then also led to wanting to and leading me to be able to communicate to that to people in a simple fashion. Because I'm a big believer. I, you know, I don't really call myself a Christian. I love Christ though. I love a lot of the prophets, but Christ was a special one. But his ways were not dogmatic, right?
Yeah.
Saint Francis, who was a great saint, um, he wanted all his monks and priests just to wear robes and go out and beg. And, you know, but, after he died, then they all started wanting to build churches, right? And build rules because a prophet's words are wisdom, okay? But it's hard to put wisdom down in rules. But there's the Virgos and the accountants of the world, which are beautiful and we need them, right? They want to codify everything in top of some rule-based system, and you know, and what happens is it gets too dogmatic, and that's not what Christ or any of the prophets ever wanted. They wanted something that was fluid and wise, where you just tuned into spirit.
Well, it's,
So it's so it's very practical.
I think something to really highlight that you said in there that you, when you wrote something down, you questioned whether it was your belief. That it seems like the book was really very much a labor of love, and you wanted to make sure that the contents of it was very aligned.
Oh, it's very alive. When one of my sons read it, and all my children, some of my children are pretty Catholic, they really won't even read my book. But one of my sons was reading my book, my youngest one, and he goes, Dad, he's like, I've never read a book where it was like sitting down and just talking to somebody,
Yeah, that's
which
right.
is beautiful. And that's my writing style. I just communicate like I'm talking to you. So,
What were the biggest misconceptions you had about spirituality before you owned your journey?
mm, probably the biggest one was, you grow up in a church, you grow up in a religion, you're doing these things, and not that any of it is bad, um, but taking responsibility for your spirituality. A lot of people put their spirituality in their religion, in their church, in their pastor, but that's not what Jesus or any of the spiritual prophets, the yogis say. You have to take, it's your responsibility if you're going to live in alignment with God It's your responsibility to figure that out and understand that those concepts and those beliefs and stay tuned into the Holy Spirit. And that's the biggest thing is if you're going to walk the spiritual path, you have to make that an intention and then you have to hold to it. As Jesus said, put both hands on the plow and don't look back.
It's well, that sort of leads into our next question because it's really well, people are heading in a certain direction, and what role did sort of hardship play in your growth, hardship and trouble? Because normally when those things come in, people start to deviate or divert.
Yeah. Um, actually, uh, the hardship is part of a journey because if you're going to polish anything, you're going to polish metal, you're going to polish stone, you start with a real coarse grit and you put big old grooves in it. And then you take a medium grit and put smaller grooves and then smaller grooves until you get down to a powder. And then the finish is just a very fine finish. When you really start out on the spiritual path, uh, you go through a lot of hardships. And a lot of times the biggest ones are first uh, because you have to be polished. But as you get down the road, your refinement gets finer and finer and finer until you can reach that level of peace and joy pretty much 100% of the time without fear, without judgment, and make all your decisions based in love. But it takes a while. And the reason this is going to be a little longer than what you asked, but the reason we come into this very physical realm, we come from the ethereal realm, from the consciousness of God. And we come into these bodies for what we call a lifetime. And time doesn't exist outside of, well, it may exist in other realms, but time doesn't exist in God consciousness. It only exists on this plane. So for this particular lifetime that we come into bodies, and these bodies require dependence on each other. They require maintenance. They were gravity, and you have to create and feed yourself, and we're dependent on each other. And all that is grit, okay, to refine us. So you can either look at it as something that's refining you, or you can look at it as something that's a pain in the butt, right?
Yeah,
So while I'm thinking about this, I'm going to say one last thing, if you don't mind,
that's
and
okay.
that is I always like to leave my audience with some practical tips. Okay. So here's one practical tip. Anytime you're walking through life and you get pain, I'm talking not necessarily about like you cut yourself. Okay. I'm talking about you've got mental, physical, spiritual pain because you didn't get a job or you didn't get accomplished what you wanted, or somebody said something ugly to you, or somebody attacks your dog gets
Yes.
attacked, things like that that causes mental and physical anguish. Uh, and none of those things are beautiful, but we have to look inside ourselves and see why does that cause us pain? Sometimes because if you cut yourself and you're bleeding, the reason why you feel pain, it's a signal to your body that something needs to be fixed, right? And so that's the same thing with spiritual mental pain is that whenever you have pain, that's a signal for you to look in yourself and see what belief systems are false, what untruths that you're carrying, what victimization or trauma that you're carrying. And then once you really deeply realize those things, and there's no change that ever happens without awareness. Okay. When you become aware of eating hamburgers and french fries all the time or making you really fat, at some point in time, if you really look at that closely, then you're going to change your habit because it just naturally falls away. So when you look at false belief systems and trauma, victimization, whatever that's inside your body, if you look at it with awareness, ultimately they'll fall away. And then that's more of the refinement. So that's your first practical tip is look for pain, look at why it's being caused, look at it with awareness and let it go.
I always like the saying in reflection on that. That's I I don't. It could be spiritual, it could be religious, but I asked to be brave, so God sent me challenges in order to be brave. And I always love that saying, and because it goes on and on, where it's I requested all these different things, but if you didn't have that challenge, you wouldn't become that person on the from that challenge. So
And
I definitely, yeah, from what I shared with you before, I know that there is something that I'll let you can, because people can take a circumstance and they can definitely use it and, oh, why me? I'm the victim, or they can grow from it. Always there is that growth. So
there's that
yeah,
growth.
I don't think
And
that's,
that is the
yeah,
I'm sorry, that is the purpose why souls come to this very heavy, gravitational, dependent type of earth, because this is where you get a ton of soul growth.
yeah.
There's other places to go that are easier than this, but this is a tough school.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I wanted to just double down on that because the gold that Bill's dropping on here for the listeners, and I just wanted to make sure that I think that's regardless of what your belief is, that's really something that people should take away from this. So it's definitely tip number one in the practicality. And well, it brings us to the next one. I know you touched on this a bit, but how do you make your own experiences relatable for readers who may not share the same path? I guess we're going into that. It's doubling down there.
hmm Um, I couch all my stuff in spirituality just because that's the way I'm built. But you could take any of this stuff, and there's lots of it out there. Okay, if you look at the wisdom of the Stoics, uh,
Of stoicism. Yeah.
I mean, Marcus Aurelius and stuff like that, not as spiritual, but the things that they put forth, if you peel them back, you can put it all in spiritual terms and it's the same stuff. And just like what you just got done saying,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I can couch it as spiritual, and that's my message into the world. But all truth is truth.
What do you think storytelling is so powerful in spiritual growth?
Wow, I've never been asked that question. Let me think about that for a second. Um, well, probably a number of things. I mean, first off, Jesus talked a lot in parables. Stories are not like I'm telling you what to do and you're telling me what to do, or I'm saying this is right and you're right. It's kind of uh it's objective, okay? It's outside of us. And like you were talking about a little bit earlier, any one thing that happens right at the end of my fingertip, whenever's happening, there's at least 360 degrees of perspective, right? And so a story allows for people to gain wisdom, even if they come at it from different perspectives. And uh, and I've written a children's story and actually just recorded a children's story the other day on my YouTube page, and I write a weekly story. Some of it's like stuff I'm talking about, but a lot of it's intertwined with my life. And stories are very human too. And in this world, humanity is important. And because we're humans in bodies, uh, we need to have something that we can relate to, not just something that's ethereal in concept. So I think that's probably why stories are beautiful.
And can you share one story from the book that resonates most with audiences?
One story from the book. Um,
Yeah, we're getting a little teaser.
Yeah. Um, I'll I'll tell you a story about one of my experiences. Um, I didn't know what it was at the time. This has been about 10, 11 years ago. I was sitting in a cafe with a friend of mine who came to me in a strange way and kind of started leading me down a little further down a spiritual path. I was already on the path, but uh, and I was sitting in the cafe having coffee with her one day, and it was just at lunchtime. Uh, and I realized that my hands were shaking. They just started shaking, and I could feel this energy surge up through my body. And I was kind of, I don't know, it was freaking me out a little bit. And I looked up at my friend, and she had fire shooting out of the pupil of her eyes, like 2 inches long. And I looked around the cafe, and everybody had fire shooting out of their eyes. And I felt like I was 20 times stronger and more powerful than I've ever been. Uh, and I was madly in love with everybody. Okay. And that lasted for a little over 30 days. And it weaned off. I could only sleep a couple hours a night. I mean, everybody that I ran into, I loved. I wanted to hug them. Everything was perfect. And, that's one of my spiritual experiences and one of my stories. And why was I allowed to have that experience? It was also exhausting. Can you imagine if your energy was 10 times what it normally is and it's like that every day?
Yeah,
It's exhausting. Um,
it's hard to maintain. It's a
it it's impossible. I mean, it was just brutal. Um, but why do spiritual experiences come? Why do they leave? Why do they stay for a little while? And I could tell you some more, but I don't know exactly, except for whatever spirit God wanted me to go through, helped push me through that, through down my spiritual path. But in that, I realized that when you tear all this reality that we live in, when you can really look past, there's a Bible verse I love. It's that I say it all the time. Do not conform yourself to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you will know the perfect and pleasing will of God. See, we come into this world and we get conformed to making money and having egos and being victims and having these false, not all religious beliefs are false, but like a false belief about original sin, all these things. And those are our glasses that we look in the outside world. But as we walk down the spiritual path and with awareness, we look at the falseness that we were brought into and we assimilated, but it was taught to us as children, as young adults. But once you look at that false matrix and those beliefs start falling away, then you will really realize that everything is perfect and that the Spirit of God flows through us continuously, and that the eyes are truly the window to the soul. And the world, even though I look out in the world sometimes and it looks like a dumpster fire to me, I can still walk in peace, even though it seems like there's not, in some places, there's not a lot of beauty. And I live in downtown Birmingham, Alabama,
yeah.
and there are lots of the bus stations close, and I'm the closest convenience store in my building, and homeless people sleep on the sidewalks and pee at my front door and all type of stuff. And a lot of it doesn't look too beautiful. At the same time, I've met a lot of homeless people that are friends of mine, and I call them street friends. And they're beautiful people. So I don't know. It's the yin and the yang. It's the black and the white. It's the
Yeah.
grit and the
Yeah.
polish. It's all of it.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have the good without the bad. The-
Right. I mean, the contrast is necessary.
So, what does awakening look like in everyday life for someone who's juggling work, family, and stress? Because I think that will be something that people that are with us, holding on to every word here, and that they want to sort of experience the same thing. They know that there's more to this life, but I guess life is noisy. Is a
Life is very noisy. And, if you're asking about a practical way to start working spirituality into your life, and uh, I mean, let's define spirituality real quick. And if I forget the question, bring me back to it.
all good.
But we're all spiritual because we're all animated by the Spirit of God. Okay. The word soul actually comes from the Greek word, no, the Latin word, which means anime, which means to animate. Okay. Um, and when you talk about awakening, and a lot of people throw the word enlightenment around, which I think is a little stuffy, but the concept is we're also all filled with light. Okay. So as you tear all these false beliefs down, it's that little bushel basket with the candle. You take the bushel basket off the candle and it lights everything up. So it's that process. Um, so how to become awakened? I told you about looking at your pain. Okay. And see that type of stuff you can do when you're walking to work. When somebody pulls the pulls in front of you in their car, when somebody attacks one of your animal. I mean, a lot of what different ways. Okay. And you look at that and you just start figuring out, do I need to react to this? Because I try never to react. What I try to do is decide whether I'm going to act or not. So the first thing is using your pain to look at your belief systems, but you have to have a little bit of silence every day. You've got to, if you can't go out and walk around barefoot in the grass for 5 or 10 minutes, or you can't sit on the couch without the Netflix and without your phone and all that, you have to fast a little bit from food, from electronics. I'm not talking about, I mean, give up breakfast once in a while. Sit for 5 or 10 minutes, especially early in the morning by yourself in quiet time, because until all that outside noise kind of gets pushed away, you can't hear spirit. Okay. You've got a pineal gland in your brain. That is literally your spiritual antenna. And if this is all chaotic, that antenna cannot connect up to your higher self. Everybody comes in with a soul plan. You come in with a soul family. Even our animals are brought to us, or, in some way. And animals are beautiful and comfort us in many ways, dogs especially. Um, and we learn a lot from them. Dog spelled backwards is God, right?
Yeah.
Uh, they're about as close to God as anybody.
Yeah. Oh, he is
Uh,
the god of my house.
what's that?
My dog is the god of my house. He runs the show.
I love it. It's beautiful. I mean, they're basically, unless you harm them, they unconditionally love them,
Yeah.
right? And isn't that a fucking, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word.
Yeah.
Uh, isn't that a beautiful example?
Yeah.
Sitting in our living room every day, a beautiful example of love without conditions.
Definitely. Well, I think yeah. Well, a lot of people I think have more time than what they think they do, and they do need to take that time out for expanding themselves because life isn't always that bad when you take a step back as well. There's always
Yeah,
solutions. And how
yeah.
can someone start living with more awareness and authenticity today?
Say that again.
Someone living with more awareness and authenticity. So I think it's sort of it's a little bit more over that again because I think it's I guess it's the continuation. You've stepped back, you've taken the time, and then what's the next practical step?
I mean, I think living in authenticity is a perfect one because what happens is once we start taking our false beliefs off and we can say yes or no without a thousand reasons, um, we start taking our mask off. And I don't have to be anything than myself, which, um, tell me the name of your podcast again.
Attention is the currency.
Attention is the currency. And so once we've only got a limited amount of energy in any given day, okay? And I just got done writing a story about this a couple weeks ago. But once you take your mask off, you don't have to give energy to your mask anymore. So now you don't have to do anything in this spiritual walk except for subtract stuff. Because once you subtract all the way down, what's left is your particular purpose for coming to earth, your soul growth, and your authentic spirit, which is the Spirit of God. And the Spirit of God is unconditional love, peace, joy, you know, those type of things. And that's already inside you. So all you got to do is peel back to get there.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So, well, the next question, I think you've already answered it because you believe that everyone is capable of awakening, really, or not just some of us. Everyone's capable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all at some level, if you think about it, when the saints and the pictures of the saints, they paint that light halo around them, right?
Yes.
It's just because they stripped all this off. Once you strip all that off, the light shines, right? So we're all actually inherently in our spirits, we're already awakened already. It's just a matter of realizing it. Okay? That's all it is. And that's why when Malcolm X was in jail for 6 years, that's where he had enough alone time and quiet time to study and figure out, what he wanted to take his message of getting rid of prejudice toward uh, African Americans. He wanted to get rid of that in the world. Jesus would always preach and then he'd go up to the mountain. Buddha sat under a tree for, so many days. Nelson Mandela, he was in jail, right? I mean, you can name all of them. They all had that alone time. You got to get the chaos off of you.
Yeah. Not recommendations to go to jail though. That's
No, not recommending you go to jail, but if you do, you should use that time.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's
I
a
think that's
blessed
the key,
time.
that's the key message.
Yes.
And Bill, what surprised you most as people began reading and responding to your book?
What?
What surprised you most after people started reading and responding to your book?
What surprised me most?
Because I know that you did mention your kids before, and it's
Yeah. Um, I don't, I don't know, Daniel. The people that read my book have already started down the path a little bit, and they get these big awarenesses, which is awesome. The
yeah,
people that don't read my book, if they read my book, it'd make them super uncomfortable.
yeah.
So I don't know what else to tell you besides that.
Well, maybe by getting out, more people are going to read it, and the responses are still to come. Because is probably well, from this interview, somebody could pick it up and just it'd be interesting. That's a challenge for the listeners. Pick up Bill's book and let him know what you think, especially if you're sort of judging or a bit closed off to the discussion at the moment. I think that's a key thing.
Yeah.
So what's next for you in your writing and teaching? What's coming up?
Um, Hopefully my second book will be out toward the end of the year. That's currently my goal. It's a collection of my stories and some special stories that I've written, along with artwork. I always put artwork because symbols and artwork are a beautiful way to communicate ideas very simply, you know. I'm on lots of podcasts. I'm building my YouTube channel. I'm really just trying every reasonable method without exhausting myself to put my message. It's not really my message, it's God's message, uh, Spirit's message into the world. Um, because I think that, I mean, I'm all about practical. This is not some hooey wooey dooey stuff. This is practical. Another thing I'll tell you real quick, tell the readers, alone time, look at your pain, start look at every decision that you make, every single decision, whether you're going to pick up a glass of water, whether you're going to eat a banana, whether you're going to help your neighbor, whether you're going to do this or that, and go, is this decision in love? Every decision you should make is in love. And love might be hard sometimes. Disciplining your children is hard. That's still love. Okay. Uh, but not love is not disciplining them when they should be disciplined. So if you just look at every decision and go, I'm going to choose love in this decision, then this whole thing kind of, and have a little bit of alone time and look at your pain, this whole thing takes care of itself by itself because you'll just naturally gravitate toward the beauty that's already inside you.
Is there still some challenges that you're wrestling with in your own journey at the moment, though?
Oh, absolutely. Uh, you know, on these videos, I spew out all these beautiful things that you're
Yeah.
supposed to do. And I don't spew out anything that I don't believe in and that I don't practice. But, I'm human. Uh, it's taken me a long time to balance my emotions out. I used to get a little depressed. I still get a little depressed sometimes. But I've trained myself that sadness and all the emotions we have and the roles we have, they're not us. Wilfred doing okay?
Yeah, I'm just making sure he's not pulling out the bandages. So
Good,
just to give a quick glance over because he's shuffling around a bit over there. But
good.
no, that's perfect. Well, none of us are perfect, and there's always refinement needed. And I think the journey never stops until whatever. It's because we don't 100% know where
That's
the
right.
journey really truly ends. But Bill, we're heading to the signature close question now. If attention is the currency, what should people stop wasting it on, and what should they start investing it in?
Uh, they should invest it in finding their real selves because yourself is not your job, it's not your role, it's not your emotions, it's not your victimization, it's not your belief system. It really boils down to the Spirit of God lives inside you. And it's just like Aladdin and the genie, okay? Great big genie, itty bitty little bottle, right? That's the same thing we are. We're great big genies, itty bitty little body with all these emotions and mind uh, and physical ailments and physical dependencies. Um, but when you strip all that away, when you lay down and close your eyes, you are just a spark of the divine. And once you realize that, once you really realize that you're a spark of the divine, then you want more of that. And then it'll come naturally.
Beautiful message, Bill. Uh, Bill Portler reminds us that awakening isn't about escaping life. It's about engaging with it more fully, with clarity and compassion. You can explore more of his work, including his book, Awakening to Ourselves, at awakeningtoourselves.com, which we'll put in the description so everyone
Right?
can grab a copy and follow Bill. If this conversation sparks something in you, share it with a friend who's on the path of discovery or wants maybe exploring the path of discovery. I think that's very important to clarify as well, which I haven't got written here, but I think anyone that wants to sort of explore more of themselves or feel that something's missing, uh, check out Bill's work and possibly it will resonate with you, and that will be the path. because the journey to awakening isn't just personal, it's something we create together. Thank you again, Bill. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Daniel. Can I add one last little thing?
Yes, of course.
Uh, the word namaste that the spiritual people use a lot really means the meaning of namaste, which a lot of people don't understand. It means the divine in me honors the divine in you. So I would say namaste to you and namaste to our listeners. The divine in me
Yes,
honors the
namaste.
divine in you and all of us.
Namaste. Thank you so much, Bill. And we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks, Daniel.